The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. All leads are not created equal. I'm Sarah Duffy, Marketing Manager here at Barracuda MSP, and I'm happy to be moderating today's session. Today, I am joined by Carrie Simpson, CEO of Managed Sales Pros. During today's interactive webinar, Carrie will walk you through a simple step-by-step process to score your MSP leads. Before we get started, let's do some brief housekeeping. During the webinar, if you have any questions, feel free to share them using the questions or chat panel to the right of the GoToWebinar screen. At the conclusion of the webinar, you will be prompted to complete a brief survey. Please take a moment to tell us what you think so that we can continuously improve the content and quality of our online events. Now, without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Carrie to begin today's presentation. Take it away, Carrie.
Thanks, Sarah, and thanks for inviting me back. It's always a pleasure. So today we're going to talk about how to effectively score leads for your MSP. And I think if you're going to talk about how to score leads, you have to first talk about why lead scoring is important. Why should you even try doing that? Any sort of change to your sales process is going to be a little bit disruptive. So there has to be a valid reason before you go in and start making changes. Here's what I want to review with you today. First, I'm going to talk about why lead scoring is important for your business. I'm going to teach you a couple of different ways to create lead scores. I'm going to teach you how to adapt your sales process easily to accommodate lead scoring. I'm going to talk about how you apply lead scoring in your day-to-day prospecting activities. We're going to talk about a few things that you'll want to keep in mind while you're creating a lead management process. And then we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about automation, where it's appropriate, and how you should be using it when it comes to outbound lead scoring. So one of the other things that's important to remember is that we are a telemarketing agency. So there are lots and lots of different meanings or definitions for different terminology. So the way I'm talking about lead scoring today is how it applies to outbound telemarketing process. I'm not really going to touch on any sort of email scoring. So you might have multiple ways of scoring information within your business. And sometimes it'll all dovetail together and sometimes it won't. So here is why lead scoring is important. Your time is limited. So whether you are the owner of an MSP or a sales rep who is working for an MSP, you have a very finite amount of time with which to accomplish the things that you need to do every day. So if you are a business owner and you're only doing a couple of hours a day of prospecting, you want to maximize every minute that you spend doing any outbound business development activities. And if you are a sales rep who's doing 8 hours of outbound prospecting every day, you're in touch with so much data all day, every day, that there's absolutely no way that you're going to remember from one day to the next what's important that day. So if you think about what your database begins to look like when you're making hundreds of outbound calls every day, as much as you think you're going to remember which leads in your pipeline are the warmest, oftentimes you're going to have so much going on from day to day that you're just going to drop the ball on a couple of things. And that can mean the difference between securing that new 50-seat managed contract and missing out on that contract because a competitor came in and scooped them right at the time of renewal. So lead scoring is going to allow you to prospect more efficiently, whether you're doing 2 hours a day or 8 hours a day, whether you're a business owner or whether you're a sales executive. Lead scoring is important for prioritizing activities. So lead scoring allows a really quick and simple way for you to sort data into buckets, good, bad, or otherwise. So once you begin lead scoring, you spend less time sorting through your data. So less time clinking one at a time through ConnectWise, reading a year's worth of notes, and then deciding how to proceed with that lead. A lead scoring program allows you to just quickly look at one piece of data and decide how high of a priority is this for me today. It means less time reading notes, less time printing out call sheets, less time developing a plan of attack for the week. Your plan of attack is created for you when you're lead scoring because you prioritize by the score. This means that you're never going to miss out on an important follow-up activity. Your memory is fallible and you're a busy person. So when I think about trying to explain the importance of lead scoring and remembering when and how to follow up with people, you need to think about managed services and how the sales cycle works. Most of the time, companies are already engaged with a solution provider, or they have an in-house provider who is solving the problem that you solve. Real or perceived, they have a provider that is, in their minds, just as good as you. So most of the time, you're selling against complacency more than anything else, against an incumbent provider, and there is a shelf life for that engagement. The best sales call in the world isn't going to unseat an incumbent competitor that has a contractual engagement. So most of the time, your sales process is highly dependent on timing. When somebody says our contract is up for renewal in a year and we'll start talking to people about 3 months beforehand, that's the time when you need to be following up with somebody. So if that time comes and you've called so many people in between the day that you first spoke with them and the day that your follow-up activity is supposed to happen, you may or may not even remember that conversation 9 months down the road. So lead scoring is going to help you quickly prioritize and identify who do you absolutely need to follow up with today, and who can you push off for a day or two if all of a sudden your day becomes extraordinarily busy. This will be especially important for business owners. If you have to prioritize between supporting a paying client and doing your business development activities, you're going to want to know at a glance which things you absolutely need to take care of that day so that you don't miss an opportunity. Lead scoring is going to help you create accurate sales forecasts, which is really important. When I think about sales forecasting, I have multiple people in my organization that work on sales. I do some selling, my business partner does some selling, our sales rep does some selling, our appointment setters support that process. And if we all approach the process differently, we're never really getting an accurate understanding of where our pipeline is at all stages. So you can have very optimistic forecasters and very pessimistic forecasters. When I talk to a company and they tell me, yes, we're interested, in my mind, that deal is closed. So when I'm forecasting, I'm aggressively leaning towards, I think this is going to happen. Whereas when Tracy is forecasting, she doesn't believe it's going to happen until the retainer hits our bank account. So between the two of us, it might level out a little bit. But when you start expanding on that, multiple sales reps, some lead generators, a whole team of people who are invested in the sales process, if they're not all scoring their leads exactly the same, you're not going to ever have a real snapshot of what's going on in your business in the next quarter or in the next year. So when you're creating a lead score, you want to focus on facts, not feelings. So a fact would be an activity, something that's actually happening. And it doesn't allow room for people to optimistically or pessimistically forecast based on what they think may or may not happen. Your lead score feeds into your sales funnel, and your sales funnel needs to be full of accurate information, not feelings. And it's really easy to get caught up in emotional forecasting. You talk to somebody, the call is fantastic, you say all the right things, they say all the right things, but you really can't add them to your sales pipeline if, for example, they're 2 years away from a contract renewal. So there's a lot of things that affect your prospecting pipeline. And when you sit down and start looking at your numbers from a sales perspective, when you're looking at a sales pipeline, there's a lot of factors that you're going to want to consider. And if you want to do it quickly on a day-to-day basis, if you've got a team of people that are reporting to you and you want to know how effective they are, one of the most effective ways to look at your pipeline is simply by pulling lead scores. So instead of having to item by item review notes and activities and things that sales reps may or may not be doing effectively, you can immediately hone in on where everything is just based on one number, a lead score. If you're not currently scoring your leads, or perhaps you're scoring your leads right now and it seems like an overwhelming process, there's ways to create a much simpler approach to lead scoring. So your lead scoring doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to use a lot of customization. You don't have to bring in a programmer. You don't have to buy a new CRM or a PSA to take advantage of lead scoring. One of the things I suggest when people are starting to create their lead scoring programs is to bring everybody in to plan with them and not around them. It's a whole lot easier to instigate a change in your sales process if everybody helped create that process, as opposed to you as the business owner, for example, creating a process and then rolling it out and hoping that people are compliant. I mean, my argument towards that is like, well, they're going to comply or they're going to be job hunting. But you don't want people resentfully entering information and thinking about where they may like to go next for employment. Bringing people in and helping them create your sales lead score is going to help you enforce the importance of it, and it's going to get buy-in from people before you even make the change. So if they've helped create it, the odds on them acting accordingly are significantly higher. One of the best ways to start creating lead scores is to start talking to your peers. What's working for other people? If you're not already engaged in a peer group, if you're not attending events and trade shows and talking to other people and learning about what they're doing to be more effective and more efficient, this is a perfect time to start. Look at the people who are already successful in your industry. I mean, you may not be able to call your competitors and ask them how they're so successful, but you can interact with other people at events. Find mentors, find peers, find people who are prepared to share information with you, and ask them what they're doing. I firmly believe that you shouldn't be making enormous investments in changing systems or tools. If most of what you have works, you can probably get it the rest of the way there with a little more research, maybe some support from the person that sold you the product, or a consulting group like ours. So instead of going out and buying a whole new system, take advantage of the things that you've already purchased. If you're using ConnectWise, or if you're using Autotask, if you're using Salesforce, whatever it is that you've made an investment in, you're probably not using 100% of that system right now. There's no need to change it. You just need to make it work better for you. You're going to base those lead scores on activities completed or information learned. So there's a lot of different ways to create lead scoring. I guarantee you, if you ask 10 people on the street, well, maybe not on the street, but maybe at a conference, how they're lead scoring, they're going to come back to you with 10 different answers. But here's two really simple ways to look at lead scoring. You can do information-based scoring or activity-based scoring. And they're kind of the same, but they're also quite different. Information-based scoring focuses your scoring based on data collection. So as you acquire more information, as more of the pieces click into place, your lead score improves. And the higher the lead score, the better the lead. So in this case, for example, an information scoring system on a 0 to 6 scale would take an unknown lead. So here's a list that we've purchased. It's ice cold. We don't know anything about anybody on the list. If you're sitting at 0, it's completely unknown. If it's scored as a 1, that means all of the qualifiers that you want are confirmed. So that means you've learned how big the lead is, what industry they're in. Anything that you need to know to make it a good lead is a qualifier. So once you have those qualifiers confirmed, you move the lead along in your scoring system to a 1. And everybody in your company should know what that 1 means. So instead of having to read a detailed note about how somebody called so-and-so and they spoke to this person and this person said that this company has 20 endpoints and they have 1 server and they are you've got your qualifiers confirmed. It's a 1. Super simple and easy. You don't have to spend a lot of time taking notes, and you don't have to explain to anybody else in your company what that score means. Moving along to number 2, you've identified the decision maker. So you've had a conversation with someone where they clearly identified who is going to sign the check. Third stage here is you've confirmed that there's a need and you've confirmed that there is interest. So need and interest aren't necessarily the same thing. Somebody can be interested in what you're selling, but have 0 need for it at the current time. Important to identify that those two things are different. Fourth stage in this simple information scoring process is the company committing to a timeline. So yes, we're interested. we need to do something. We're planning to do something within this period of time. The next stage in this process is an appropriate budget being confirmed. So we're interested, we'd like to do this. We'd like to do this before the end of the fiscal year, and currently we spend X number of dollars, and we plan to continue spending X number of dollars, or our budget is, we're looking to spend less, or we have a little more because we want to do some more things. And the final stage in this simple lead scoring process is both parties agree that there's an opportunity. So here is a prospecting information scoring setup. Simple, easy, numeric, easy to follow, easy to understand. Hard to make a mistake when all you have to do is enter a 0 or a 1 or a 2 or a 3 and so on and so forth. The easier you can make it, the more likely it is that your team is going to use it. Now, one other way to approach forecasting is using activity-based forecasting. So this is a score based on specific completed tasks or activities. So here, a simple activity scoring profile might look like this. The 0 is still that unknown piece of data. 1, I spoke to the gatekeeper. 2, I spoke to the decision maker. 3, I met with the decision maker and they're interested in moving forward. 4, we've delivered a proposal. 5, they've reviewed their contract. 6, we won the deal. So both of these are very simple examples of how to create lead scores. You may want to have a 10-phase lead score. Maybe you only have 4 categories that you want to track. Either way, they should be very simple, easy to understand, and easy to implement. So if you make the decision to create a lead scoring process for your MSP, you're going to have to start adapting your sales process to take advantage of it. So if you're not currently scoring your leads, you're going to have to first set up a way that you can track everything effectively, because you can't bury your lead score in a note field. So the first thing you'll have to do is adjust or add user-defined fields to your CRM or your PSA. And there's different names for user-defined fields. I know HubSpot calls them something different, and Salesforce probably calls them something different. ConnectWise definitely does, but there are, the things that you use that are drop downs right now. I think ConnectWise comes set up with a drop-down field that kind of shows you what phase the opportunity is at. Lead scoring is very similar to that. Normally, you would create a drop-down or a pick list so that everything is consistent. So instead of having to, again, create a field that allows for margin of error, so people spelling things incorrectly, for example, we have user-defined fields, for example, that identify what PSA any MSP that we talk to uses. And you wouldn't think that there would be 8 different ways to spell ConnectWise, but apparently, according to our database, there are. So you want to make sure that you're using exactly the same terms or exactly the same numeric ranking for everything, so that everyone's tracking things exactly the same. Lead scoring and sales process as a whole only works when everybody is doing the exact same thing in the exact same way. When everybody is empowered to do whatever they want in the database, you never find information again. So there needs to be a consistent way for you to look at data. And the way to force people into that is using a drop down or a pick list, and you can make what is called a forced entry into your CRM or your PSA, which simply means you cannot close out this lead. You cannot click save until you fill out this field. So make those fields mandatory, and people will have to use them. You want to train to your scoring process so everyone is doing it exactly the same, and make sure that you're being consistent. So you can force consistency on your team by creating that forced field, or you can just constantly train to what you want to happen. And of course, lead by example. If you're not doing it, your team's not going to do it either. Scoring is going to allow you to build a daily call list by date and by priority. So you can click 2 buttons and look at any data that you want. And this is why you want to have a lead scoring process to begin with. So remember the comment I made earlier about 9 months down the road, this company's now ready to talk about a potential engagement because their contract is renewing in 90 days. You called them so long ago that the company name doesn't mean anything to you anymore. So when it comes up on your daily call sheet, let's say you've got 2 hours of calls to make, or sorry, you've got 2 hours available to you to make calls and 5 hours worth of calling to do. How do you know which ones you want to call first? Well, if you've scored your leads effectively, when you sort your calls by who do I need to call today and how important is it, what's the score, immediately your list will be up to date, accurate, and you can get as much done as possible starting at the very beginning and working your way down. The most important thing here is to not ignore follow-ups. Nurturing leads is the key to winning deals. So when you adapt a lead scoring process, the most important thing is consistency. The second most important thing is follow through. Right? You have to consistently score your leads, but then you have to make the conscious decision to not ignore your follow-up activities, even if you're having a day that's getting completely out of control. And as a small business owner myself, I live in that world with you. I would like to be doing business development every hour of every day. I would like to be growing my revenue every hour of every day. But guess what? I have clients and they need things from me. And sometimes things go a way that I'm not very happy about, and I have to stop what I'm doing and I have to go fix a problem somewhere. So in those cases, what I want to know most of all is, what can I push off until tomorrow that won't hurt my business today? Lead scoring helps me do that. Well, I have to call these 4 companies because I know that there's an imminent referral or an imminent renewal here. And I don't want one of my competitors to scoop it up. So the worst thing that could happen would be for me to ignore a follow-up activity that was ranked high on my priority list and then push that call off for a week only to find out that one of my competitors called them the day after and secured the engagement. So nurturing and follow-ups in a consistent way is how you win deals. You need to be at the right place at the right time all the time, and lead scoring is going to help you do that. You need to focus on creating lead scoring as part of your day-to-day process, right? So it's not as difficult as changing some of the things in your sales process, but there's still going to be some change management involved. If you've got sales reps and it's the wild, wild west in your office right now, and they don't actually have to do anything other than close deals, if you've allowed your superstars to slide and not show their work, trying to create an environment where all of a sudden everybody has to document all day, every day, becomes a little bit challenging. So lead scoring is a nice way to segue into a much more complex, data-driven environment. But you're not going to take a sales rep or a business owner who's used to just going in for the win and ignoring showing their work. You're not going to get them to change overnight. So just creating one extra step right now is an easy thing to manage and change. So instead of saying, we do this like this now, and you have to do 17 extra steps, which you're going to get pushback on, you can add in new steps to your sales process one at a time, wait for them to be adopted. Again, get the buy-in from your team before you make the change, help them create the lead scoring process along with you. Now you've created one extra step for them, just one extra step, and that is not an overwhelming thing for a team. Make sure that the layout in your CRM or your PSA is conducive to that one-click score. So create that custom defined field in that drop-down. They click the button and they're finished. It's going to help them more than they know at the beginning of the process. If you consistently score your leads over the course of a year, you're going to have a really robust database that tells you what's going to happen in your sales pipeline for the next quarter, the next 4 quarters, the next 8 quarters. Right? Everything will have a ranking, and that'll allow you to see very quickly where the holes in your sales process are. If you don't have the ability to create a custom user-defined field, and if you're a sales rep here today, you probably don't have access to the administrative rights that you require to go in and create user-defined fields. You're going to have to go and talk to somebody who's going to have to talk to whoever administers your CRM, and they're going to have to create the defined field for you. But one of of the things that we found working in ConnectWise, for example, is in the notes section where there's a subject before you enter any information into a note. If you use that subject header appropriately, you could score your leads right in the note subject header. So as long as everyone's doing that consistently, that's a little workaround cheat for using a system where you can't actually actively add a user-defined field. So you score your lead right in the note, the date you called, the call disposition, so that means what happened on the call, and how are you scoring the lead. So it might be something like March 1st, no answer, 0. March 3rd, no answer, 0. March 3rd, gatekeeper, 1. So depending on how you're currently tracking what happens on each and every call that gets made for your business, adding scoring may be a rudimentary thing for you, or it might be a revolutionary thing to you. Call dispositioning is just as important, but that's a whole other webinar. In our system, we use a system called Zoho, and it is very similar to any other CRM or PSA out there. It tracks anything you need it to, and you can set it up any way you want it to work. In our system, I can just type in a note looking for anything. So if I wanted to find anything that was called on March 3rd that had a score of 0, I could search for that data. It's not as convenient as having it at your fingertips and being able to report on it, but you have to do the best you have with what you have already. So instead of putting off creating a lead scoring system until you have a perfect process or a perfect system, I'm going to spoil this for you. There is no perfect process and there is no perfect system. There are just systems that get better. Without adding in user-defined fields, your reporting is going to be challenging, but not impossible. There are lots of little workarounds, and you can look for one that works best for you. And if you're having trouble figuring out how you're going to add lead scoring to a system that you don't seem to be able to adapt very much, give me a call. I am happy to work on that with you. Oops. So important things to remember as you're creating your process for lead scoring is that one size does not fit all. Like just because it works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Just because it works for your peers doesn't mean it's going to work for you. You have your own approach to selling, and there are as many sales processes out there as there are companies. So the goal is to find something that's going to make sense to you. If what I've said to you today sounds ridiculous and it's not something that you'd ever want to use, well, you know what? That's fine. Find something else that works for you, but you need to find a system and a process that's going to work for you, because without a system, without process, you cannot scale your business. The only thing in a business that you can't scale, in my experience, is exceptions. So if everybody's running around willy-nilly doing whatever they want in your database, you're never going to be able to improve what you're doing. You can't find the things that you need to measure. And if you can't measure it, you can't help it get better. So first and foremost, find something that's going to work for the process that you've already developed. You don't have to go in and reinvent the wheel. You just have to improve the wheel that you're using right now. And buy-in is important. It's only going to work if everybody on your team adopts it. And yes, you can be a dictator and go in and say, everybody do this, do it like this, do it today, do it now. But if you can explain to the team how important it is to be able to predict, not just for you, but for them, what their revenue is going to look like in the next quarter and in the next year, that's a whole lot more appealing to a team than, hey, you have to do these 3 extra steps now because the boss said so. No, here's why you want to do those extra 3 steps. It's going to be more revenue for you in the long term, higher commission checks, better bonuses. It's going to help us staff effectively, because if we're looking at our lead score and I see that next quarter we've got a whole bunch of 5s that are showing up, I know that I'm going to have to start thinking about staffing up for that quarter, because if we close all 10 of those 5s, they're only one stage away from being closed. If we get them all closed in that month, we're going to be shorthanded. We're not going to be able to support that business. So simple lead scoring allows you to get a quick snapshot of where your business is from a sales perspective, and it helps you predict problems before they occur. And that should help you get buy-in from anybody on the team, whether they're working in a technical role and they're going to want to know if they're going going to get swamped with onboards in March, or if they're working in a sales role and they're going to want to know, hey, maybe I get to buy that cottage I want next year because my Q4 is going to be amazing. Automation is kind of a touchy subject when it comes to lead scoring. If you're already using a marketing platform of any kind, and that includes any of the built to suit MSP marketing platforms out there, they already have a lead scoring system built into them. And we can argue forever about whether or not I like them or I don't like them. They exist and people are using them. So very similarly to lead scoring for email marketing, you can trigger events based on lead scores for your outbound prospecting as well. So if you've already got a really complicated automation process that has scoring built into it, simple lead scoring might not be appropriate for you. You don't want to have multiple ways of scoring your data. So if you already have a lead scoring system in place that came with your marketing platform, you might want to consider how you can duplicate what you're using there in your sales process here, instead of trying to figure out what the difference between a score on your email platform and a score in your sales system looks like. Try not to serve two masters. You really just want one way of looking at your data. So if you're already committed to using a different scoring system from another tool, you may want to think about how you can replicate that for your sales process. If you're using a marketing automation platform, you may want to dive deeper into how you can dovetail your scoring process. So if your marketing platform is already feeding into your CRM or your PSA, there's going to be a way for you to start managing all of your data consistently in one place instead of creating silos where your telemarketing data lives here and is scored like this, and your email marketing data is scored here and looks like this. You really want to focus on how do I create a sales process that is seamless, where everything means the same thing to everyone. So having a 3-digit score for an email lead and a 1-digit score for a prospecting lead probably won't work very well for you long term. Something I like to remind people of, especially if they're highly committed to an automation process, is when you're prospecting, you don't want to lose track of personalization if you're relying on automation. So if you're using trigger events to set off marketing sequences or marketing cadences that involve different touches, so when this happens, we send an email and then we send another email and then we call if they open the email, and if they say this, we do that. So if you've got a lot of complex automation built into your system already, simple lead scoring, again, may not be something that's going to work effectively for you. But if you're a business that's just starting out on the journey of lead scoring, as simple as you can get it is going to work best for you until you figure out how to manage and measure data using a scoring system. And then you may want to move on to lead scoring 102. This is very basic. We've never tried this before. We want to figure it out in a way that doesn't add unnecessary complexity to our sales process. What I want to do is create something that's so simple and easy to learn that I can have a caller come in and understand how we do everything quickly and simply. That is all the content I have prepared for you today. If anyone has questions, I'd be delighted to answer them.
Great. Thanks, Gary. If anyone has any questions, you can submit your questions in the questions panel to the right of the GoToWebinar screen. And we'll give everyone, about 5 or 10 minutes here to submit your questions, and we can answer your questions.
I just want to mention that if anyone is wondering how they can get this set up, Managed Sales Pros can help you. We are more than happy to come in, assess how your sales process is working for you right now, help you build something quickly and simply that's going to work for you. And we're also happy to just take it completely off your plate for you and do your prospecting.
We have a question here from Ron asking if this webinar has been recorded. And yes, it has been recorded and will be sent out within 24 hours. All right, Carrie, I think that's it. No questions today. So I want to thank
Sorry, I
everyone.
muted myself.
Oh, no worries.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to thank you, Carrie, for another great presentation. I hope we do another webinar very soon. And I want to thank everyone for joining today.
All right, thanks, Sarah.